Barakatay Hawa, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Time Dictates Prophecy. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just going to go as long as I can. I might have to do this in parts. I'm not sure. See how it goes. But this is something Spirit has had me speaking on for a little bit, dealing with time dictating prophecy. Because everything that we see out here has a certain set time for it to be accomplished. And until that set time for it to be accomplished happens, that's when the next phase, so to speak, happens. So what I want to do is want to go through a couple of precepts, but I want to read this definition here for the word prophet. For those of you that have been watching and listening, learning, you know that the word prophet or prophesy means to say before. It says person who speaks for the Most High, one who foretells, inspired preacher. And we jump down here. Per, which is forward, or pro, which means forward, in front of before, right? So pro is before or in front of, and then the root of phene, to speak. So basically when you put it together, it's to speak before. So that's what a prophet or to prophesy means. Now, as I've mentioned in certain lessons that I've done, it says chiefly due to Christian writers, probably because of pagan associations of vates. Now, vates is the Latin way of saying prophet. Okay? Like you have the Vatican, which those are, Vatican pretty much means prophets of the serpent, when you break the word down. All right, so let's get into it. The first precept, like I said, I'll go as long as the Spirit allows. And then we may have to do a part 2 to this, see how it goes. So when we go to Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10, this is very important here. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. Revelation 19 and 10 says, and I fell at his feet to worship him. And he said unto me, see thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahushai. Worship the Most High, for the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy. So the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy, and we have a more sure word of prophecy. Okay? So before Yahushai was crucified, grabbed up and crucified, the disciples asked him, what shall be the sign of his coming? And of the end of the world, which meant the end of the age. And he gave them certain prophecies, events, tokens, signs of things that would be happening in these times to let us know that the Lord was right there. Now, the Spirit has had me mention before how you've always had famines, you've always had wars, you've always had hardships, uproars, different things, happening worldwide, plagues, pestilences, and all of that, but never on the level that it is now. One back to back, multiple, and clusters, like it is now. So we're in the time when Yahushua is about to make his second coming. And you have those small hats that claim to be the people of the Most High, but don't believe the Messiah came. They're still waiting for a Messiah to come, when the Messiah Yahushua already said that, these things will be happening in these times. And we see it all happening, playing out just like he said. So we're at the very end. Why? Because the different time periods that these nations were supposed to rule have happened, and the different times until when each prophecy was to come into to pass happened and is happening. This is why we see the MOTB rolling out on a conveyor belt out there. Why? Because it's time. It's the end. It's speaking loud and clear. And those that have ears to hear, meaning spiritual ears to hear, are tuned in to the frequency of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai and able to see the prophecies playing out just like the Lord said they would. So now let's go from there to the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 9. These are some precepts that came to mind earlier, and I just jotted them down. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 11, it says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, because this is a race. Remember what the Apostle Paul said, run all, because this is a race, so run all, and one may obtain the prize. Why? Because that is the ratio, of how the men of the Lord are, pretty much delivered. Out of every 1,000 Israelites, one of them is righteous. That's not a big, that's not a actual good ratio, for men, Israelite men. But at the same time, that is what the Lord used to mete out the ones that he wants. So for us to be here, this is a very privileged position that we're in. That's why we say we're the hopeful elect. Hopefully we be the elect. Hopefully we be saved. Because out of all of the Israelites out there, he could have chose anyone to be here. But he just so happened to choose us. Why? He knows why. So it says, and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift. Right. It doesn't matter how fast you run. Usain Bolt or whatever other, quick athletes out there, know the battle to the strong. Right. It ain't how strong you are to fight in this battle. Neither yet bred to the wise. Doesn't matter how much wisdom you have. How much ability to cram things in. Because you have people out there that can read books. I'm talking about just read. They have all type of information. And once they read it, they got it. They never forget it. Then you have other brothers that may not be as studious, but the Spirit of the Lord is working with them. And whatever they do learn, the Lord retains it. And if they do happen to forget, when the time comes, the Lord will bring it out. No, yet riches to men of understanding. So it doesn't matter how much understand, because you have a lot of knowledge out here, understanding. But, it doesn't matter. That's not how it's done. Nor yet favor to men of skill. And it doesn't matter how much skill you have. But time and chance happeneth to them all. Because there's a time and a chance for everything. There's a purpose for everything on the earth. For man also knoweth not his time, as the fishes that are taken in the evil net. Right, because this is dealing with the day of one's death. But it's also dealing with these different empires, that are ruling. They don't know their set time, because once a nation conquers another nation, they think because they had the ability to, conquer that nation and the strength to conquer that nation, that now they're going to rule forever, because they will never be taken down, because they took down the strongest nation that there was. But that's not the case. It says, and as birds that are caught in a snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time, because this is what we're entering right now, an evil time, when it falleth suddenly upon them. And this evil time will never be repeated ever again on the planet Earth. There will never be another time like this. Daniel 12:1, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, which is Michael the archangel. And there shall be a time of trouble. And this is what we're about to enter into, the time of Jacob's trouble, which some call gay. Some say it's not coming, but we see it crystal clear that it's coming. Such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. So this time, there will be no other time to compare to it, because this time is the end. Also, the Lord gave them a hell of a technology, a hell of a blessing through the weaponry that they have. So it's going to get really, really bad out here. And at that time, meaning when in the midst of all of this, thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So if that's the case, we are supposed to be looking for these signs, of these times, and the things that were written that dictate what's about to happen. That our Lord is right at the door. He said that, that I'm right at the door. So let's go from there. Let's go to the book of Job. These are just basic, fundamental building block scriptures. Job 14:5. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So the Most High has numbered this devil's kingdom, just like he did the Babylonians, just like he did all other nations. And one thing you have to remember is in prophecy, the Lord will give a certain date, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that they're going to fulfill that whole full time. Because the Most High, he can cut the time short. Scripture say, if the days should not be cut short, there shall no flesh be left to be saved. So the Lord will give him a certain period to rule, but then he can cut that time short, as in the case of the Babylonians. Now, there was a prophecy by Jeremiah that the Lord was going to, have them fall into the hands of the Babylonians for 70 years. Now, when you do the research, the Babylonians had power over us. I believe that was 66 or 67 years. I haven't done the research in a while, but when you go back, it was about 66, 67 years. So if that's the case, the number 70 represents completion, a complete amount of time. And the Lord cut the time short, because that's when he set it up for the Medo-Persian Empire to take over, for our forefathers to be able to rebuild Jerusalem, because it was thrown down by the Babylonians. So that's one example of the Lord cutting the time short. Now, does that make Jeremiah a false prophet because he said 70 years, but the Lord cut it short? No, because the Lord gave a certain amount of time and then he cut it short. It says, thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So they can't pass a time frame, or they can't pass the amount of territory that they can conquer. Because you had Alexander the Great, or the Greek, he conquered many lands. Then you had Genghis Khan, he conquered greater lands. But Alexander the Creep, he was only given so much time to rule and so much land to conquer. Why? Because this was prophecy. It was prophesied that way. This is the way the Lord wanted it. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he wants. And this is why he caused him to only rule so much, and he wanted to conquer the whole world. But he was only going to be able to conquer what the Lord set up for him. And he was only going to be able to rule for the time period that the Most High set up for him. And that's, where we're at. That's why time dictates prophecy. All right, so let's go from there. Let's go to Job, same book of Job. This time let's go to the 21st verse. I'm sorry, the 21st chapter. Oh yeah, hey, well, hopefully it'll go through, my brother. Just bear with it. Maybe refresh, or if you're on your phone, maybe you might have to turn the phone off and turn it back on. Job 21:21. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him? Why? Because the purpose of ruling is what? To have pleasure, to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, to be able to enjoy your kingdom, your riches, your women, children, servants, so on and so forth. But what pleasure is he going to have in his house after him when the number of his months is cut off in the what? In the midst. Because that's what we're seeing. Because he is about to come into the height, into his noonday, where he's about to establish great, future plans for himself. He's about to invest. He's invested all into his future, and he is about to, finally realize his dream, his goals, his aspirations. But he's only going to get so far, because once he establishes that and he's about to sit down and eat, that's when the Most High is going to cast the fury of his wrath upon him. Okay. Now let's go from there to the book of 2nd Ezra. You brothers, these are scriptures you brothers already know. I'm bugging. Let's go to 2nd Ezra, chapter 4, and verse 36. And it says, and unto these things Uriel the archangel gave them answer, and said, even when the number of seeds is filled in you. Right, because the prophets had to be, sealed. And the seed is the word, and it had to be sealed in the prophets. And once that was done, then the Lord can bring the destruction. That's why in Revelation 7:3 it says, "Hurt not the earth nor the sea, until we have sealed the servants of our prophets the servants of our Lord in their foreheads." It says, "For he hath weighed the world in the balance." So the world has been weighed in the balance. And when the world is weighed in the balance, the weight of it is the wickedness that they've done. If they've done wicked, they're going down. If they've done righteousness, then they can rule for, I guess, a certain period of time. But the Lord is mixing this perverse spirit so that they can do the things that they're doing to bring the end quicker, because we're coming up to the time, or the cutting off of their time. It says, "By measure hath he measured the times," and that's what the Lord did. He gave a certain measure where each empire would rule. The empire of the heathens, that they would rule for a certain period of time. One would rule, come up, and fall. Then the other one would come up, would rule for a while, and then they would fall. And by number hath he numbered the times, because everything is numbered. Remember, time dictates prophecy. Everything is numbered. Everything has a timetable. Everything has a certain cutoff point, a beginning point and a cutoff point. This is why the Lord showed King Solomon the beginning, the midst, and the ending of times. He showed the same thing to Moses, because everything is dictated by time. These prophecies that we see are dictated by time. It says, "And by number hath he measured the times, and he does not stir them until the said measure be fulfilled." So until the time when the prophecy is supposed to click to the next prophecy, they don't move. That's why the Lord told Habakkuk, "At the end it shall speak and not lie." And you'll know when it's moving from one point to another by the things that are seen in the earth that are, showing that these particular prophecies are being fulfilled. And this is what we're, witnessing right now, especially with the MOTB, which is the micro C-HIP, and the whole system in the direction that it's moving. You see World War III ramping up, wars, rumors of wars, different skirmishes, things happening, because it's time. And that's going to go good with this other precept. Okay. So Songs of Solomon 8:4, "I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you stir not up, nor awake my love, until he please." Right, so the Lord is not to be stirred up, nor awakened, until he be pleased. And this, obviously, he's pleased now to do this. Why? Because we see the prophecy speaking. So obviously the Lord is awakening to these devils, and making them, do the things that they do to move this thing into the next phase. Things are moving fast. Now let's go from there. Let's go back to the book of 2nd Ezra. Let's go to the 9th chapter now, and the first verse. It says, "He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself." So how do we measure the time? By watching the things that are happening and bringing them back into the scriptures to say, okay, this is what this means. This is the time right now. This is what's happening. We're in the time of the MOTB, or we're in the time of Jacob's trouble, or we're in the time of famine, pestilence, so on and so forth. "And when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before," because the Lord gave him many different situations that would be taking place. One of them, when you go back, was what? The internet. The internet being, brought out in order to bring out the truth, and that's what we see happening right now, with the internet, the setup the way it's set up, and the truth going out like it's going out. This is part of the signs. So obviously when they actually brought out the internet, that was a time when the prophecy of the internet was speaking. All right. It says, "Then shalt thou understand." Why? Because prophecy, we see it, we read it, and then we see it, we say, that's what this is talking about. This is what that's talking about. Then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. So we're now seeing the Lord visiting this earth. These are things that the Most High spoke about. These are things that Yahushua spoke about. And these are the things that would let us know for sure, of a surety, that, you know, the end is here, pretty much. Let's go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 42 and 9. It says, behold, the former things are come to pass. Former things are many things that were spoken of in the past, such as the flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, and others. And new things are declared. Right, and there were new things that were being declared, like the Babylonian captivity, the Assyrian captivity, you know, and many different other things, the Greek Empire, the future kingdoms, before, which is where you get the word prophesy, to say before they spring forth, meaning before they start speaking, before they take place or root, I tell you of them. So the Lord tells us of these things before they even come to pass. Sing unto the Lord a new song, right? Because the song that's been sung here in America and throughout the world of this plantation / Renaissance Christianity is not the song of the Lord. That's an old song, an old tired song. Now we're singing the new song that the Lord is only dealing with the Israelites. The Israelites are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, so on and so forth. And, you know, this place called America, Babylon the Great, with the Edomites ruling, is about to be destroyed. All right? And it's praised from the end of the earth, right? Because all nations are going to praise the names of Yahweh and Yahushai. Ye that go down to the sea and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof, let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice. The villages that Kedar doth inhabit, let the inhabitants of the rocks sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, and declare his praise in the islands. The Lord Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. And this is what Yahushai is coming to do. He's coming to take these devils down, you know, Esau and the other nations, and establish his kingdom upon the planet Earth. All right? This is what he's coming to do. This is why Isaiah saw him, in same Isaiah, he saw him, and he said, who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments? Why? Because at the end of this whole structure, this whole system, Esau would be ruling. They would be the last and final rulers on the planet before Yahushai comes back to deliver his elect and to establish his kingdom on the planet Earth. He says, I have long time holding my peace. Yeah, because the day of vengeance has been burning in his heart. And when he comes to crack the clouds, he's coming out to let out a sigh of relief, a sigh of roar, a sigh of anger, a sigh of revenge, you know, a roar. I have been still and refrained myself. Right. Why has he been still and refrained himself? Because it wasn't time. It's not time. It's almost there at the door, but it's not time. So no sooner than the Most High says, go, he's going to be gone in a flash. Now will I cry like a travailing woman, like a woman about to give birth. I will destroy and devour at once, because when he comes, he's coming to bring vengeance. He's coming to bring deliverance to the elect of the nation of Israel. He's coming to bring vengeance, destruction. I will make waste mountains and hills. This is dealing with governments, you know, big governments and smaller governments, but also dealing with actual mountains and hills here in America. This is going to be a plain, and dry up all their herbs. And I will make the rivers islands, and I will dry up the pools. And I will bring the blind by a way. Salakia, no, let me see. All right, so let me hold off on that because I want to come back to that. So this is when Yahushua comes to bring forth the destruction. Now let's go from there to Habakkuk, and then we could come back to here. Habakkuk 3. Because we're in the midst of the destruction. But before the Lord brings the destruction, what did he say he do? He revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets. Then the wicked shall be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, shall reveal with the spirit of his mouth, and shall consume with the or destroy with the brightness of his glory. So this is what's, what we're in the midst of, witnessing right now. Habakkuk 3:1, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet upon Shigionoth. O Lord, I have heard thy speech. Yeah, because he actually saw, these things happening. But when you witness on the earth the things that you've read, that's us witnessing, or seeing or hearing the speech of the Lord, right? And was afraid. Yeah, because when you read these things, you get nervous. You think about the destruction. Yeah, we want the Lord to destroy this place, but you also want the Lord to deliver us in that day. So you get like a little nervous, because you're hoping to be delivered, when everybody else is going to be destroyed. And was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. Why? Because time dictates prophecy. So once a certain period of time goes by, that's when that prophecy starts to speak. That's why Habakkuk said, revive. Because if you have to revive something, it was dead. When something is dormant, it's sleep. When you revive it, it becomes alive. Revive that works in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make known in wrath, remember mercy. See? So this is why the prophets always spoke about that. They saw the great destruction. They feared. They got nervous. And they also asked the Lord to deliver them. Now, let's go from there real quick to the book of Psalms. 119 and 126. This is a heavy precept too. It says, it is time for thee, O Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, to work, for they have made void thy law. So who's the one that made void the law? Esau. They say they're a God-fearing nation. They say they're the people of the Lord. They over there in the land of the Lord, breaking every commandment that they possibly can, and then some. America claims to be a Christian society. They set or establish their principles upon the principles of the Bible. All lies and deceit, thieveries. They are thieves, and that's all they've been doing is just lying. So it is time for thee, O Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. Okay, now when we go back to Isaiah, right, chapter 42, in the midst of all of this, when this is about to go down, this is what the Lord said in verse 16, and I will bring the blind by a way they knew not. Who are the blind? The Israelites. You have different precepts, but you have Revelation 11 and 8, which speaks about being in a dead state. When you're in a dead state, you're pretty much in a blind state, And the way that we knew not is what? This truth. The things that we're teaching right now. The things that we're learning. This great awakening. The Israelites, Israelite men standing on the corners of the earth, teaching this word, bringing out the understanding, defending the gospel, teaching and just going out there and bringing this truth out. So much so that the enemy, the devil, these individuals that have established their way that they shove down people's throat are getting nervous because of the message that's being taught. And they can't fight against it. That's why they choose to turn to slanders and lies. That you better take a hint from Brother Polite and the things that are happening to him for lying on us and doing the things that he did. At least the Lord unleashes fury on your red ass. And I will bring the blind by a way they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them and crooked things straight. See, so this is all of those lies and all of the pitfalls and obstacles that were put in the way for us to be able to get to the truth. The Lord removed all of that out of the way. so that we can get the truth, this truth. It says, these things will I do unto them and not forsake them. Why? Because we are the people of the Lord, and the Lord said he has a remnant. You know, there's a remainder, the ones that are not going to stay upon Esau, the ones that are going to stay upon Yahweh Bashem Yahushai in truth. Now, let's go from there. Let's go to the book of Malachi, chapter 4, because this is how the Lord set it up for us to wake up in these times. Malachi 4 and 5, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Because the Lord had to wake us up through the prophets before he brought the destruction. And that's why he sent Elijah back 2,000 years ago, which when he sent him back 2,000 years ago, it was to turn the heart, to be the voice in the wilderness. This time, really, when he sent them this time as Elder Abba Bivens, this is when he turned the hearts of the children to the fathers. Why? Because back then it wasn't time for the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. This is the time of the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The times that we're in right now, and the word for dreadful is Yerah, which means fear. To fear, revere, be afraid, because everybody's going to give reverence to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You best believe that. All right? It says, and he shall turn the heart of the fathers to their children. Why? And the heart of the children to their fathers. Because we were blinded. We were in a dead state. We had wandered out of the way of understanding. So there had to be a prophecy fulfilled to where this prophecy, to where there would be a man who is Elijah, you know, whose spirit that was in him was also in the prophet Elijah back when he was on the scene, you know, that would stir up memories in the people of the Most High, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, by way of the Bible. And this is what we witnessed, you know, in these times and are witnessing. It says, least I come and smite the earth with a curse, right? Because otherwise the Lord will just take this whole place out. But he has an elect, and those elect had to be woken up. For what? For prophecy's sake, you know? And time dictates prophecy, because he set it up to where we would be, when Judah was brought here, that would begin that 3.5 days, you know, of being in blindness or being in that dead state, you know, until that set measure was fulfilled. Once that set measure was fulfilled, then you had a man by the name of Elder Abba Bivens, which is Elijah the prophet, if you can receive it. And he was the one that started stirring up the minds of the Israelites, beginning first with Judah, the so-called Negroes. And this is what we see right now. And from that point on, they started to be added more souls to that ministry. Some fell away, more were added, others fell away, more were added, others fell away, more were added, so on and so forth, until you see what's going on today with this great awakening. Now, let's go from there to Amos. Amos chapter 3 and verse 7. It says, surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. Right, because before the Lord does something, he speaks about it. And who is a spokesman on the earth? The prophets. Let's go real quick to Hosea. Salakia. Hosea chapter 6. And I believe that's verse 5. Yep. Therefore have I hewed them, cut them down by the prophets. Now, did the prophets have cut them down? In some cases they did, like Samuel did, the prophet Samuel did to Agag, but not always. It was by the words. Elder Apostle Gabar, one of his favorite scriptures, Jeremiah 5:14. I know it by heart because he quotes it all the time. You know, that will make this people, that will make the word fire and this people wood, something along those lines, you know, and they will devour them. So the words of the prophets would devour the people. Therefore have I hewed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth. And thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. So time dictates prophecy. the Lord, before he would bring the destruction, he would send forth the prophets to speak these things into existence. Jeremiah 28:8, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and of evil and of pestilence. And this is what we're witnessing right now. Why? Because we're at the end, and the Lord is reviving his work. The Lord is making his words come to life, and we're witnessing the final stages of Esau's kingdom and the final stages of the last and final prophecies before the heathen kingdoms are destroyed and Yahweh's kingdom is established / Israel's kingdom. So I'm going to hit one more precept and I'm going to leave it there, because this next part that I want to go into is going to be, take a little bit of explaining, and I want to be able to, to break it down for you, brothers and few sisters out there, Lord's will. So if the Spirit hits me after this, later on to go over it, then we will. Daniel chapter 9:1, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. And I might revisit this scripture. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by what? By books. So you understood by the books, by these scriptures, the number of years. See? So he understood by the Bible the number of years, which was what? A prophecy that was spoken of, right, by Jeremiah, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. So when he went and read the scriptures and he saw what happened with the Babylonians and what they did, then he understood. When he was in the Medo-Persian Empire, he understood then, after the prophecy was accomplished, he understood that prophecy was speaking about, the Babylonians coming and destroying Jerusalem. Okay? But he understood it by the books, by the prophets. He understood that it was a set number of years. And then once he crossed from the Babylonian Empire into the Medo-Persian Empire, that's when he understood. Why? Because it had been accomplished. Okay? And Lord's will, like I said, I'll come back and do a part 2 to this. I got a few other precepts here. And Lord's will, it'll be edifying. Lord's will, this was an edifying lesson. And, I hope that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.